There's never a good starting point for an unusual story. And I suppose there's never a conventional end either. Here I was thinking my career bottomed up after I interviewed that hobo 11 years ago. It's odd being pulled back into the fold. It sucks when you're the only one that gets saddled with a story no one else thinks will really pan out. Tabloids, audio tabloids, is probably the best way to describe where my profession has thrown me. The last people to have actually read one of my stories probably did it in some gas station. An article about a missing little girl in West Virginia. I shouldn't have written it. It was crap. I didn't have anything to go on. A few first-hand sources that either wouldn't back up their claims or wouldn't stay long enough to be bothered with a follow-up. I don't blame them. The girl had already been gone a month by the time I got anywhere on the story, and the police search had already been called off. The last person I interviewed was someone that met her only once, and only served to confirm that she'd run away, which made her disappearance even more of a crapshoot than it already was. I quit after that, became a desk clerk, eventually an editor, but I guess someone actually read that story. I got a call 3 days ago from a nurse in Charleston, West Virginia. She claimed she'd been trying to find some way to reach me for weeks, but hadn't had much luck. Not since the blackout hit the eastern seaboard 6 months back. Apparently one of her patients, one Claire Julian, has become rather adamant about meeting me. The nurse explained the girl is only lucid a few hours a day, and isn't exactly articulate with her words, something that I only really understood when I met her firsthand. But I was requested for, by name, specifically in connection to my article about the missing Rhea Sayer. She claimed she knew something. Normally I'd say going to a follow-up on it would have been crazy. The case had been dead for what felt like an eternity, and in the interim I'd moved to London, meaning it was a nasty puddle jump to get back to North America. But there was something niggling at the back of my head I couldn't shake, something that kept badgering me to hop on a plane and get there as soon as possible. I should have never written that article. I remember tearing up the notes I'd been writing during the case after I finished interviewing the hobo. Hell, when I listened back to my old dictaphone recording, I could actually hear it on the tape. Now, I get a lead to a story that I abandoned to page 15 of a dime store magazine 11 years ago. Maybe I just don't like leaving doors unopened, or I just want an excuse to burn through all of those vacation days I've been letting get dusty. Either way, I booked a flight, shelled out pound upon pound of pounds in the currency exchange, and took off to meet this girl. I've made this recording right after interviewing her because I'm reopening the story. I came here to get answers, and all I wound up getting were questions. You're about to hear my discussion with her, and if you're as baffled as I am, well, welcome to the club. I'm Ethan Kavanaugh, and I'm currently meeting with Miss
Julian.
Miss Claire Julian, who has given me permission to record our conversation. I've got to say, Miss Julian, I was rather surprised when the nurse called for me.
10 by the square, sum of...
Claire?
Yes?
Miss Julian, do you remember calling for me?
Mr. Kavanaugh, right? Yeah, I remember.
When I arrived at the hospital, I had been told Claire had been through some serious trauma. What exactly, no one was quite sure. She had shown up on the hospital's doorstep, unconscious, and holding an envelope addressed to the director. As soon as he'd skimmed it, he'd began throwing around orders for Claire to be treated. He gave them an illness to look to, something to do with the nervous system, and she'd been left there ever since, looked after without end by the staff, all of whom declined to be recorded. The director himself has refused any appointments with me, and at the time of this recording, I've yet to speak with him. Hopefully, that will change. However, the side effect of the director's aloofness means that not a single orderly knew thing one about Miss Julian. She was a girl, roughly 17 to 20 years old, blonde hair, green eyes, around 5'8", with a crooked nose and rather small ears. After all of that is where the wall of anonymity clamped down. It's Kavanaugh, but I understand. People don't exactly get the pronunciation right away. So when I was called for, apparently something I wrote caught your eye?
Yes.
Do you remember what that was?
Cracked article.
Excuse me?
Your story. It was in a cracked article. About missing persons. Very funny. Funny people.
Missing people aren't exactly a laughing matter.
Funny people.
Miss Julian, please stay with me. I came all the way from England to talk. I need you to focus. Miss Julian? When I'd spoken to the orderly who called me in, she was hoping that I could maybe help identify Claire as a relative or a friend. She explained that when we'd talked on the phone, she'd quickly lost hope that I'd be able to give any answers. I can see why she was so frustrated. None of the orderlies could tell me what Claire's treatment regimen was like, but the girl seemed high as a kite every time I tried to speak with her, meaning either she had some kind of brain damage or she was drugged beyond belief. But just when I thought I was getting nowhere, she said something odd that caught me off guard.
The nightmares begin when you're young.
What?
6. I was 6.
What happened when you were 6?
When Daddy wouldn't listen, he said they'd just end.
The nightmares.
I just wanted them to end. He didn't believe me. He wanted me to be quiet, always writing in his book. Daddy, please, I want to sleep.
Claire, focus, okay? What does any of this have to do with me?
My birthday, he brought so many friends. Scary, 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 scary.
Claire, please, my article. Ethan Kavanaugh? You called me. You called for me. Claire, focus!
Daddy! Make them stop! Make the banshees stop! Make the screaming stop! Make it stop!
Help! Someone come help! Crap! Where's the call button?
Daddy! Ray is behind you! Behind you, Daddy! Don't worry, Daddy! Raya, please!
Give me 10 cc's of Galazadrine and have the defibrillators on standby.
Looks like shocked.
If we play this right, we can have her stable in 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, sir. We're going to have to ask you to leave.
And there it is, the first vindication of my trip. I had to leave almost immediately after that outburst, the hospital staff giving me dirty glares when they weren't busy calming Claire down. So I couldn't follow up with any questions. Not that I would have. Claire had enough going on by the looks of things, and I didn't want to compound that. At least, not this soon. But she shouted Raya's name. That's the hook for me. Up until this recording, I haven't once mentioned Raya by name to anyone. Even my original article kept her name under wraps upon request of the family. So how does she know it? Raya isn't exactly a common name, and the fact that she requested for me, by name, by the exact article, means that she knows something. I've got this sinking feeling that I'm about to go down the rabbit hole. That I'm about to get dragged into something. And it's not just because of my conversation with Claire. On my way out, I ran into a rather colorful character, a farmer that'd come into town for medicine. I hadn't even realized I left my recorder going until halfway through the conversation.
I'm telling you, Sjin, White Book's fucking with me again. Bastards are gonna run me out of cattle. I just fill medicine, Dean. I don't investigate crime. Why don't you call the cops?
Because my farm falls in White Book's jurisdiction, and you know how tight-knit they all are. They'll turn me away the moment I come to them.
Excuse me. Did you say White Book?
Yeah? What about?
Sorry. My name's Ethan. Ethan Kavanaugh. I'm looking into a rather bizarre incident that happened there a few years ago.
Bizarre? You've never been to White Book then, have you? Bizarre is their norm.
Dean, stop being such a gossip.
I'm not going to tell lies. The place is weird. It's common knowledge.
That doesn't make it polite conversation.
Excuse me, but I'd actually like to hear about this. There are a couple of things about this report I'm starting that aren't adding up. Any tidbit of information helps.
Look, I'm gonna go take a smoke break. You old ladies want to chit-chat about White Book? Leave me out of it.
He don't say it, but he's as spooked as I am about that damn town.
I have to admit, every time I hear it, it sends shivers up my spine.
Yeah, right?
What? Oh.
What?
It's nothing. Do you mind if I record you? I mean our conversation.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Thanks. So, White Book, you say there's... that weird things happen there? Could you elaborate? Also, if I could get your name?
Dean Sommers. I'm a farmer that lives between here and White Book, about an hour south. I don't honestly go into White Book all that often, so a lot of what I'm saying might not be exactly on the level. But I used to be a farmer in Kentucky. Uncle died, I inherited a good plot of land in the mountains, great for raising cattle, less so for crops. But the net profit seemed good to me, so I packed up and moved out here. Been out here for maybe about 4 years now. And the first year was great. Now though, shit. I'm thinking of closing shop and heading back to Kentucky.
What does that have to do with White Book?
I was getting there. Nearest I can tell, I pissed off the folks in White Book when I decided to sell to people outside of the town. I mean, at first it was just a calf or two going missing, a few cows getting on the skinny side. Now though, it's like a whole blight bit down on my herd. The fattest are still pretty scrawny, and the sickly went from ill to dead. That's when my crop started souring too. I thought it was just a one-season deal, maybe something bad in the rainwater. But it's been going on 3 years now, and I just know something's up. I keep seeing people on the edge of my property, in the tree lines usually. I've only caught a glimpse of them a couple of times, but they just don't seem right, like they're wearing funny-looking masks. Then, when actually going to town, I keep thinking I'm seeing the same people, just without their funny little outfits. Either it's a trick of my eye, or people in White Book are messing with me. Hell, one time a townsfolk came up to my stand and bought a steak. Not weird, except the wacko tore open the package and shoved the whole thing down his throat raw.
That's disgusting.
Bastard kept it down too. I'd have puked my guts up, but he just walked away after that. Steak juice dribbling down his chin like it was normal. I closed shop early that day and headed home. There are some times where you just don't want to deal with the shit life throws at you. And I ain't alone. I've talked to a lot of folk from White Book, and a lot of them seem pretty normal, but only a few of them mentioned seeing anything strange. Quite a few uneasy folks living in White Book these days.
I see. Would any of them know about a missing little girl?
You never said anything about a missing girl.
I'm following up on a story I wrote 11 years ago. I just got a lead, but she's not being very cooperative right now. And with all the weird holes in the case, I'm kind of reaching for straws.
Well, if a little girl disappeared around White Book, which in all honesty doesn't seem horribly out of character for the area, there's not much I can do to help. But maybe there's someone who can. Another one of those uneasy folks, like myself. She's a teacher at a middle school in White Book. Says the kids have been acting strange lately. I could pass you her phone number. See if that gives you anything.
I Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Mr. Sommers was rather forthcoming, and I can't thank him enough for that. I've been told not to come back to the hospital for a couple days. The doctors are blaming me for Claire's irritated state earlier. So now I can't interview the person I came to see. I've got something else to go on now, though. And even if it doesn't wind up being related to the Rhea Sayer case, it's already spinning something that could be netsworthy back home. Tomorrow, I'll be heading out to White Book. It's about 2.5 hours by car, and I can't say I'm exactly excited to go there. I went there once or twice during my initial investigation, and it seemed normal enough. But now, whenever I think of the place, all that comes to mind is Valentine's warning, and the distrust that seemed to drip off Mr. Sommers in waves. I'm nervous. I don't know what I'm going to find there. I'm actually kind of scared. But come what may, I have to know. I just have to. Into the rabbit hole.